Bring out the talent. Bring out the talent.
Bring out the talent.
Welcome to Bring Out the Talent, a podcast featuring learning and development experts discussing innovative approaches and industry insights. Tune in to hear our talent help develop yours. Now here are your hosts, TTA's CEO and President, Maria Melfa, and Talent Manager, Jocelyn Allen.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone.
Yeah, I guess it could be both. I was like, no, Maria, you're correct. It's the afternoon. But depending on where you are, it could be any time of day. But it's nice to see you, my friend.
It's nice to see you as always.
We were having a little dance party.
We were, as always.
I know.
And I like some of your new moves. I was trying to copy you.
I just do what the music brings to me. Really, you just feel it in your soul and you start moving. And I was gonna say something and be like, who hasn't gotten down with us in a while, and I was gonna say our producer David, but then he pulled out the sprinkler and I was like, oh, there he goes, he saved himself there. So nice, very good, my friend, very good. Around the mic stand and everything, impressive.
And we even got our special friend and guest Al doing some dance moves today too.
You can't stop. You can't stop. You can't stop the boogie, man.
Welcome back, Al. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, that's such a good topic.
Agreed.
Something that we all need, and we don't talk about this topic enough. But Let's get started. So did you know, Jocelyn, that a staggering 60% of leaders experience burnout by the end of each day?
Absolutely crazy. What a number.
And another study revealed that an astonishing 87% of leaders reported regularly switching between 3 or more roles throughout their workday. And I think to me sometimes, or probably to you, it's about 27.
Multiply by
exactly.
7, please.
And these statistics highlight the need for leaders to prioritize their own mental and physical well-being. So today, as I mentioned, we have our special guest who's back for her second time, Dr. Alessandria Polizzi. Did I say it right?
Why do you hate my name, Maria?
I don't. I'm so bad at pronouncing you.
But you nailed it like 8 times.
Polizzi.
There you go.
Polizzi. Okay, so I won't even edit that, right? Do we have to edit that out? So Polizzi. I know this. I'm Italian too, and some Italian names have different pronunciations. So I added a little bit of a different spin to it.
I adore everything about this woman.
Okay. So Dr. Al, and we will refer to you as Al because I know that's how you like to be called. Dr. Al is the CEO and owner of Verdant Consulting. Her company helps companies and individuals better understand the importance of self-care for leaders. With her extensive experience, Al shares valuable strategies that leaders can implement to enhance their overall well-being, effectively managing stress, and maintaining resilience in the face of challenges. So welcome again for the third time, Al.
Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to have you back, my friend. And we had talked with you a few weeks ago about the new kind of fresh topics at hand when it comes to mental well-being in a professional and a personal environment. And one of the things that you brought up was self-care for leaders. And it immediately struck our interest because we're like, there's that layer that we're not talking about here, because luckily and thankfully it's becoming a much more well-known kind of topic in professional development classes and leadership development classes. So can we talk a little bit about that, the importance of it, and kind of like why it triggered for Maria and I the need to want to talk about it? How does self-care in leadership, what's the importance of it, and how does it impact leaders' overall effectiveness?
Yeah, so I'm happy to talk about this since our company focuses on workplace mental health and helping people do their best work. And here's the thing, we lean on the World Health Organization's global guidelines for workplace mental health. And in that, they list 12 what are called psychosocial hazards. These are known hazards that exist in the workplace that impact and can have a negative impact on our mental health. One of those is managing other people. And so the research has shown that there is an emotional weight to being responsible for other people. If you Google leaders and burnout or self-care or well-being, 99% of the things that will come back are about what leaders can do for their teams. There is very little, if any, obviously we offer, but about what does the leader need to do for themselves? And here's why that's important. Number one, it's well documented as a hazard. What does that mean? The higher up I go, the higher risk to mental health. With some studies showing as much as 78% of the C-suite struggling with mental health concerns. But if I want to focus on outcomes, okay, there was a 2016 study that showed across all sectors that when I had strong emotional regulation as a leader, I had about a 30% increase in job satisfaction for my employees. And we know the saying of you can't fill from an empty cup or put your own mask first, right? These are things that have gotten used ad nauseum. But they're actually based on research and data, which is if I'm empty, I can't really give to other people. And when I practice some of the practices we'll talk about later, I actually activate the parts of my brain that make me a better leader. So it is often seen as selfish, but is actually the best thing you can do for your team is making sure that you're okay.
I agree with that completely. And because it is a huge weight to manage other people. And if empathetic leadership is another thing that comes into play in order to balance the scales with people's mental well-being in the workplace and outside of the workplace. And that in and of itself adds an extra layer, feeling all of those feelings if you're trying to make sure that a person's personal life can be integrated properly into their professional life for productivity. Because the most exhausting thing I also think is putting up that mask of being like, okay, I'm checking this at the door. That doesn't really exist, right? Our brains don't have the capacity to do that. So from a leadership perspective, you're right. Like and I love the connections being made here because I've experienced as a people manager myself, like, and being somebody who's managed by people, I've felt the effects of somebody not being there with me and felt the effects of me not being able to bring my best self on a given day for the same reasons. So it's really insightful and agreed that final statement, the best thing that you can do is show up, like take care of yourself for them. It's really, really important, really important.
Yeah. Well, and if I can add to that, one of the things that I've seen, I've been in leadership development for 2 decades plus. One of the things I see in leadership development is we talk at leaders, right? And it's all about give. And we should, right? It is a privilege, it is a responsibility to be a leader. I can't give if I don't have it. So you talk about things like EQ, that's about how I show up for other people. You talk about things like being empathetic and compassionate and vulnerable. Okay, great. But how do I do that in a healthy way? And then again, how do I make sure I'm okay so that I can care for my team? That's the missing part. We talk at leaders, but we don't teach them how, and we don't make sure that they're okay as well.
When you did call us up a few months ago, as Jocelyn mentioned, and talked about this new program, it really was amazing to just really think that nobody else is offering this program. You never see this. It's always about just burnout in general, and not to say that, every level, it's very important to address it. But as you're mentioning, as we're all talking about, it really is such another level because obviously if you have a leader that's supposed to be creating a dynamic culture where people are engaged, people feel happy, and people are productive and getting things done, but they're completely burnt out, that obviously affects everything in the organization. So it's right on. And I think it's just such an important topic. And I know
really is because it's emotional labor, Maria, right? Like, people do emotional labor. We're not teaching them how, we're not teaching them why, we're not giving them the skills to be able to navigate that in a way that's not going to burn them out.
Sometimes, Al, I don't even think that I realize that I am feeling burnt out because I guess you're just expected to be handling so many different things and so many different topics that I always say to myself, I feel like I'm in information overload or my brain cannot comprehend any more information. But I guess if I really take a step back, that really probably is the way that I am that's the way I'm handling stress or not handling stress. If I did take a step back and say, you know what, I can't have 6 consecutive meetings all about each meeting having a discussion about 10 different topics. By the time I get to my second or third meeting, I just feel like I can't comprehend this anymore. So,
and that's important for you to recognize about yourself and set boundaries around that, right? And that's the self-awareness that's so critical in knowing not just how we show up for other people, but what our needs are as leaders, right? What are the things that either trip us up? What are the things that can get in our way? What are some self-fulfilling prophecies we have about ourselves and biases and judgments? There's different ways that we need to be aware of ourselves that's beyond just traditional self-awareness, which is how do other people perceive me?
Yes, because you just say to yourself, hey, well, that's my responsibility. I'm supposed to be able to juggle around 500 conversations and be able to manage all my work and be able to manage all my people and make sure that everybody is, again, engaged and happy and efficient and getting things done. So I guess the more we talk about it, the more I realize how much of a need there really is on this topic.
That sentence you just said was exhausting.
I know it really was because it's true.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Right. But when you think about it, you're like, wow, you really just, as you're going through it and this and this and this
and this
in your voice and you take the deeper breaths, like even as you're saying,
it's true.
It is. It's a lot.
Be there emotionally for people and be supportive and be vulnerable and be all these things and here's the thing. You used a very important word, which is supposed to. Most people use the word should. If you find yourself using the word should, you are in a mindset of judgment, and that is a big warning sign. Should according to whom? And we are humans. We have flaws. We are good at some things, not great at others. And that's okay. So practicing that acceptance and understanding of maybe someone somewhere can, but for me, this is what I need in order to be the best leader I can be for my team.
So what about, I mean, all these are really great ideas, right? We're talking about it. We're passionate about it. We obviously understand the connection with why this is so important. And I'm sure everybody listening is going, wow, we're right. Like we're not thinking about this emotional and well-being layer for our leadership. So now comes the question of like actually fitting it all in, because the supposed to's and the should to's, right? If that's the right way to say it, are taking over our to-do list. So how do you prioritize self-care and, for lack of a better word, try to maintain certain standards that are established, and also maybe the reason why we need to focus on this?
Well, I would argue that if you aren't at your best, you're not doing your best work. And I doubt that you are meeting those standards. So you can beat yourself up all day long. That is not going to make you better at performing, period. Have not seen one study where beating myself up and telling myself I should do something resulted in better outcomes. Every study shows. So when we practice self-compassion and we are connected to our values and goals, then we have better outcomes. And so what I would say, how do you choose? Be really clear on what your goals and values are. So for Maria, is her goal and value or values being knowing everything about everything? Probably not. But is it to be able to help her team make decisions to move quickly, or whatever that value is that's important to you? That should be what guides you and how you pick how you spend your time. And other things you can choose to delegate, you can choose to deprioritize, you can choose to come up with better strategies, etc. But if we're not clear about what's important to us, we try to be everything for everyone, which again, the research does not shine a good light on that. That does not usually end well.
There's so many components to this. It's truly amazing.
It is. And for all of those reasons you just listed, like we have to do this, we have to do that. It's almost like you're addressing each one of those things and why the proponent of self-care is so important to each one of them.
How to be empathetic, how to handle conflict management, because in addition to obviously our our workload,
Mm-hmm.
managing our team's workload. You have all the emotional and the personality component of Susie's father is sick. Obviously, you feel bad. So and so just experienced a loss. So and so is very stressed out because they are not sure what to do on this. You have conflict between some teammates. So it's just a whole nother level.
Right. Or the person who's having like a really awesome thing happening and you're like, I'm about to ruin your day. Like even like think all of those types of things. Like that's an emotion for me. Like I hate that. That's my emotion, is a very strong one because of I want one of my strengths, if we tie it back to strengths, because we all love the Clifton strengths. One of my top 5 is includer. And that, I mean, so that aspect of being like also an empathetic type of leader or people manager, it's a lot. But I think that some part of what I do is kind of establish and I behave appropriately, of course, but as who I am, and my team gets me, and they also are in a space with me where I get them, and the communication's really transparent and clear, and it helps, but there's still so much that goes into it.
Yeah.
So,
and you talked about masking earlier. So masking, there is tons of research on masking, pretending to be something you're not, perfectionism, and also toxic positivity. All of these degrade and erode our mental health and well-being. They are toxic for us. And so when you can practice authenticity, lead with authenticity, then you just, again, leaning in on strengths is a great place to start. Where am I working where I am not leaning on my strengths, or I'm trying to lean on something that is probably not going to be there for me? And who else has that strength? Where else can I lean, etc.? That's also another excellent way to approach this.
So I have just concluded that I am going to move to the country, buy a farm, and just raise sheep and sell wool. Okay.
Is that one of the solutions in your program, Al? Because did we skip to the finish line? Have we figured it out?
No, there's no easy way around this. So yes.
No.
So my mind was going to.
Of course.
No, but I do obviously enjoy leading and being with people.
Yes.
But again,
that's what keeps you in it.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's what keeps me in it. But it is true. I think we're so used to having to do so many different things that we don't even realize that we are possibly acting in a burnt out manner.
Right. I think part of the burnout is the modus operandi behind it. Like it takes you a second to realize that that's what's actually going on, is that like you've become robotic because you're burnt out and you're used to all these things and you're just going through the motions because that's what the routine has done. Right.
Yes.
So yeah,
I'm given the same answer in every single meeting, even if it doesn't even make any sense because I'm becoming robotic.
Well, as long as the answer is yes or no.
That IP program sounds great. I'm saying that to everything. Every answer.
So what about, are there specific things or like best practices in different types of industries? I don't know, because some can be more high stress than others. Are there certain best practices that are beneficial for leaders in depending on how much stress their role is yielding, I guess?
Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about common hazards and then also common practices, if that's okay. So well-documented challenges for leaders. Number one that we probably heard of is imposter syndrome. So that is feeling that somehow you've gotten into a role that you're not qualified for. And if people find out, things will go badly. Very common. And depending on how high up you go in the organization, the higher you go, the more well-documented is the feeling of loneliness, because you can't have a best friend at work. You can't have those connections that we as humans have been wired over 200,000 years to have. And so leader loneliness is a big watch out, again, especially as higher up in the organization. And then the third one we've already touched on, which is this false belief that I should be all things to all people and not have any feelings about it for some reason. So we have this very false mindset within the workplace. It's unrealistic. And if you take a step back, it's like, how on earth did we think that you could turn off your feelings just because you're on the clock? Like, not even physically in the office. We're not leaving things at the door anymore. I'm at home, right? Or wherever I am. And that somehow I can turn off parts of my brain, but keep other parts on. Not real. And so those are all challenges that I think come up pretty frequently for leaders. So what can I do? I think we touched on a couple, but the biggest one is to practice self-coaching instead of self-criticism. Chances are, if you're a leader, you're probably a really good coach, or at least you try to be. And so why don't you practice that on yourself? Instead, what we practice in most cases is highly self-critical internal dialogue that we would never say to another human being. And there's been a lot of research about when I practice self-compassion, but also leader self-compassion. In other words, saying to myself, well, of course this is hard. Of course, Jocelyn, telling someone negative news is hard because I'm a human being with a pulse, right? And so, yeah, that's going to be difficult. I'm going to do my best because I want this to go well for this other person, right? So but being kind to yourself about that and talking to yourself like you would a close friend. So that internal dialogue, that self-coaching instead of self-criticism is a big one. That self-awareness and self-reflection. The common comment I hear about self-reflection is, I don't want to take the time because I'm afraid of what I'll find. If you're hiding from yourself, you're not in a good place. You're not going to be able to give to other people if you can't at least connect with you. And so practicing, and that doesn't have to take time. I tell people, for me, I'm not a big meditator. I'm impatient. I'm too fast and all over the place. You know this. And so what I do is I look for those small pockets. So as I was waiting for our Zoom call, right as we were starting, I was spending some time, the 90 seconds or 2 minutes, just self-reflecting. How am I doing? What's going on? How am I feeling about this meeting or the last one, etc. Find those pockets. So those are some, there's a lot more, obviously, but those are some places that I would say to start.
So we used your program several times for resiliency training, and that was fantastic. Why did you decide to develop this program?
Well, this is actually the second part of our resiliency training. So the initial one that you took was for all people, for teams, resiliency for teams, and then resiliency for leaders. We built at the same time because, look, 70% of leaders are rated poor by their teams, right? So whatever we're doing, it is not working. And as you shared at the top of this discussion, leaders are also struggling. So teams are struggling, leaders are struggling. What we're doing isn't working. And so as I've done the research, and even as I've seen most recent data come out, like the World Health Organization showed that investing in building leadership capability has the biggest tie to business outcomes. When we have leaders who are equipped, because they are the heart of the organization, they manage up, they manage sideways, they manage down. And in my 20 plus years of leadership development, I had never heard the concept of self-coaching versus self-criticism, of taking care of the human part of being a leader. And that to me is critical.
Right. You don't hear enough about that topic. So as far as the shift to a remote or hybrid workforce, that obviously has contributed to this. And I know there's obviously pros and cons from working from home. Right now, our organization, people come in approximately 2 days a week. And obviously there's a lot of, it's great being home. You don't have to obviously have the commute and all that. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of challenges working from home as far as the isolation, as far as not being able to shut yourself off between your family life. So how do you see that contributing to this? And do you think that it's actually better for people to have a hybrid work environment so they do have the ability to have both options?
Yeah, the data has been mixed on this, as you probably know. But for the most part, those people who do work remotely, they feel they're more productive. They even feel that they're better able to be connected at work. Here's how. You have to be intentional about being connected to other humans. We evolved as creatures in community and not in isolation. And so, one of the biggest areas of torture is to isolate a human being, right? So, or punishment as well. So as a leader, especially with that loneliness, if I'm a CEO, which I am, but smaller team, I need to connect with other CEOs, even if it's just something I read or a Slack chat or just a buddy I can call. We need human connection. And you can do that remotely. Absolutely, you can. I've built relationships with people around the world. Some of my closest friends are in New Zealand or in the UK only because of how the world has shifted. And so you can create those relationships.
I definitely think that it certainly helps with our virtual technology. I still don't feel like it's the same because I feel like I do get, and maybe it's just how I work, but I feel like I am on constant Zoom meetings that I feel like I get more burnt out when I'm on Zoom meetings. And I know there's been a lot of studies on that. So I do feel it's important for people to get out of the house and socialize.
Oh, absolutely.
From a work capacity also.
Yeah, absolutely. And also think about those Zoom meetings. Don't make hour-long Zoom meetings. Make 50-minute Zoom meetings. Make space for humanness to happen.
You have a buffer. I literally just changed my Zoom and Outlook settings to automatically do that for like my selected 30 and hour-long meetings, is to give that buffer. And it's a game changer because it really is. It's like, oh, no, I haven't. Now I can go do whatever, walk away, stretch my legs, as simple as whatever it could be. Yeah, big difference maker.
But I agree that the human connection is critical. And again, we evolved to pick up on the nuances of physical interaction.
So how can leaders of organizations help their other leaders and themselves be able to adopt these programs and practices?
Yeah, the best thing to do is by modeling, right? The best thing to do is, and to focus on being 10%, 1% better. Don't look for revolution, look for evolution. Because if you do, you're just going to go back to your old habits. But try changing one thing a week or a month, depending on how big it is, because that's more sustainable. And when we model behavior, our teams follow. If we have folks on the team who've experienced trauma, we're co-regulating with them, and we also can show a better way. Now, if I'm someone who like, this sounds great. This is something I want an organization to do, right? This is something that I really think, and I work with organizations who they see this as a strategic advantage, having leaders who can actually lead as humans and be more effective. They're able to, they see that connection, and there's tons of data that can support that, not just opinion. A great place to start as well is to look at the World Health Organization's guidelines for workplace mental health. Obviously work with partners who understand this, and think of this not as a deficiency, but as a skill. We are not taught in any that I at least that I'm aware of. There is not a class that I have seen that tells me how to do these skills, and they are skills or competencies. And so it's learnable and it can be transformational. I talked to a head of a nonprofit, and she went through our resiliency program, actually just the main one. And she said that it transformed how she leads. It made her feel more comfortable setting boundaries and being clear. All the things we ask leaders to do, but it taught her how.
What are some other tips for leaders to incorporate within their day to help them?
Yeah, I think so. Daily self-reflection, I think, is critically important. And I don't just think it, the data shows that, which is that there was one study, for example, where they had participants just spend 15 minutes a day practicing. And I'm talking self-reflection is, hey, Maria, how's it going? How am I feeling? How am I doing? How am I feeling about today? How am I feeling about yesterday? Like, we're talking simple. If you want to journal, if you want to, whatever you want to do, 15 minutes. They had 25% improvement in their overall well-being just by doing that. We teach this process called the YMCA, where you get to know yourself and your strengths. You practice mindfulness, self-compassion, which we've already talked about, and then acceptance. And so acceptance is another big one. As leaders, we think somehow we can control anything and everything, including what our team thinks about us. We cannot. Recognizing what we can and can't control and then taking action against it can be hugely transformational in how we lead, because we're no longer trying to control the uncontrollable. We're focused on where we can make impact.
I love that. I love the YMCA acronym too. That really helps you make sure you practice that.
Practice it.
And if you do the dance, it
Yes,
actually
exactly.
It's like a form of it,
adds
right?
everything.
Yeah.
Even like if you do the why, you're opening yourself up, you're making yourself big.
that.
Make yourself big, your confidence
Oh, it feels good.
fills in. So if I'm feeling nervous about a meeting, or I'm feeling like intimidated, or my imposter syndrome is coming up, I get big. And so I do that why. It helps immensely.
It also gets rid of bears. So
Also-
it's a good
Because that's another level of stress that you have to deal with. If all of a sudden you're managing your team, and then you're
then
driving home, and all
you're
of a sudden-
trying to control their
Exactly.
emotions and keep things regulated. No, but in all serious, it's amazing. I say this all the time, because I learned about just more about the brain and the body and how amazing these machines are that like give us life, because they're the only things on planet Earth that operate like 100% of the time. There's no rest period for our bodies, but everything is connected. Like we have a main focal point that directs everything that we do. So it's all tied together. So by physically doing something, it will change your mental capabilities. So
Yeah.
opening yourself up physically in that why stance, your brain will calm itself down and feel big, like it's like it has more oxygen. It's thriving more. It's fascinating what our brains can do. So
Also listening to gangster rap helps me immensely.
I love listening to some rap music myself on my way to work. I've been listening to a lot of Drake lately.
A lot of Drake lately. There you go.
I'm old school with some salt and pepper, but
Yes.
Well, one of
so
my
good.
marketing employees, Becky's going to see Snoop
No
Friday
kidding.
night. She just mentioned.
That is so fun.
I know.
So fun. I was talking about him the other day. I was like, who would have thunk it? He would have been like America's sweetheart.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I know.
It's really like what
Yes.
he's become. It's
Yeah,
so
I know.
awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about the culture around this, Al? Because it's one thing, like you said, to support it by modeling, like as the leader of the leaders and bringing it into the organization. But what about the like providing the supportive culture behind it to continue to explore self-care for yourself as a leader and start adapting to the skills that you acquire?
Yeah. So this is actually a very common question I get, which is that this is all great, but how do I get my manager to do this? Because
Right,
that ain't
now what?
right. So, but here's what I say to that is that build the house you want to live in as much as you can. And at some point you have to decide what's culture is a good fit for you to be healthy and do your best work. But in the interim, nothing's perfect. And if you are focused on creating the house that you want to live in, that has a lot of impact on your peers, your leader, etc. Because these are not just hypotheses that I made up by myself. This is based on decades and decades of research that shows better outcomes every single time. At least a 30% improvement in job satisfaction, in employee engagement, in revenue, in innovation. I mean, anything on your strategy list, if you have psychologically healthy workforce, you will hit those targets. That is guaranteed if you put these in place. And so the outcomes will come. And if you have a toxic workplace that's going to undermine that, then that's some self-reflection that you might want to review.
Well said.
Very well said. I was flashing on mute.
Well,
Feeling
because it's
crazy this
easy to
afternoon.
blame. It's easy to blame. Well, I would do it if my leaders did, right? We have to start somewhere. And so the best place to start is with you. Because I think we tend to go, well, I would do it, but everybody else is the certain way. And it just proves how bad we've been at developing leaders, right?
Yeah.
The fact that there's so much of this and it's so prevalent, what we're doing isn't working. And so we got to try something different.
How do we attribute it to like feelings of selflessness instead of selfishness? Because that's something that honestly, personally, I might go down. Like I'm taking too long for myself. Make it 5 minutes instead of 10, even though like I clearly know I need 10 minutes. I know plenty of people who would probably feel that way, even if I, as their best friend, family member, or leader was saying like, I need you to do this, that would still be the feeling behind it.
So this is why I like self-coaching instead of self-care. Self-care feels like pampering. I tend to, I mean, although we talked about it and we have the course on it, it sounds, I think that's the mindset. I as a leader, right? I don't practice what I would call self-care, but I do practice self-coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And self-coaching is I know where I want to go and I'm going to help myself get there in a way that's more effective than beating myself up, telling myself I should already know how to do it and ignoring how I feel, which is what we tend to do. So I think that self-coaching mindset, if I was coaching someone else, what would I say to that person? And that's how we use our verbiage for ourselves. Hopefully you're not the yelling and cussing at people type of coach, because
Depends on the day. No, just kidding.
But it's not pampering. And what you're doing is you're also, just from a neuroscience perspective, you're activating the part of your brain that makes you a good leader. So when I practice self-compassion and acceptance, I'm actually activating the nurturing and positive affect parts of my brain. So there were a bunch of different research studies, for example, that looked at pediatricians and had them practice self-compassion, different countries, different studies. And in every case, they had better patient outcomes when they spent time, and we're not talking about a lot of time, practicing self-compassion. So when I take better care of myself, I can take better care of other people.
Yeah, very well said, and really great perspective, because I agree, calling it self-coaching, I think automatically changes how you view it as this is development. This isn't hampering. I'm not plugging in sick time and actually going to the beach, like whatever it is. And then I'm feeling a layer of guilty, although we have a policy that prevents us. Yeah, we have a policy that prevents that because we have fun days, which it's going to be like 94 on Friday. So thinking about it, but
sounds good.
It's true. Like that changing even just the terminology for it instantly changed my mindset around it. So really insightful. Thank you for answering that question.
You're welcome. And hopefully you adopt that self-coaching.
Yep. Yes. There's a day one. And I agree that this is,
Baby steps.
Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. Personally, professionally, all of it, and encouraging everyone to do it. Everybody needs to be able to do it.
YMCA.
YMCA. Memes going around the office, right? Do your YMCA, and we insert the YouTube clip every time. Yes. Hopefully, we don't get what is it? Trademark rights called?
Yes.
David.
It's an acronym. It's just an acronym.
All right. Iffy. All right. Well, make sure you cut it if it needs to be. All right.
Always a wonderful conversation, Al. So your program sounds absolutely needed, and definitely looking forward to providing this type of coaching program to our clients and helping them out.
Absolutely.
That's the goal, right? Help make the work less painful.
Yes, I agree. And better leaders and better teams and all of the
Better
great stuff that
outcomes.
goes along with the outcomes. Absolutely. Speaking of outcomes, we have a game to play with you, and we'll see if you are as successful this time around as you were the first. So, David, can you tell us, is the TTA 10
It's the TTA 10 final questions for our guest.
Al, you're fantastic. Dance moves abound. All right. You are not new to this, my friend. It's your second go around at the TTA 10. I've got some fresh questions for you. 90 seconds on the clock. Answer them as fast as you can. And you know what happens depending on the results at the end. So David will be ready to give us those. But don't worry, all in good fun as per usual. So are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
That's my girl. All right, David, the clock, please.
Yes, 90 seconds on the TTA 10 clock begins now.
Al, what's your favorite flavor of Lifesaver?
Cherry.
What is your favorite sport at the Summer Olympics?
Oh. What's the one with the little ribbons? Synchronized swimming. I know, I changed my mind. Whatever. Moving on.
I like it. I got a fever. What's the only prescription?
For the flavor of Pringles.
What's your favorite way to cool down on the hot summer days we're having?
I think you mentioned the beach.
You mentioned beach. What is 2 + 4?
6.
Marco.
Polo.
You round the corner at a haunted house. What jumps out at you?
Someone in a bad costume.
What's the next book I should read?
Emotional Agility by Susan David.
If you weren't building a wellness training empire, what would you be doing?
I would be having my bed and breakfast / used bookstore on the beach.
Oh my God, get me a room. Get me a room right now. You've got a sweet tooth. So what's your go-to treat?
I do love Sour Patch Kids.
Good choice. All right. It's official. 10 questions down. David, your turn, my friend. What do you got?
Well, I don't know if anyone's in suspense. I'm not, because with a time of 59 seconds, Dr. Al is well below the threshold, and thus she earns the TTA 10 salute. I had to think of something special, so I got on the phone with Paul Simon, and here's what we came up with together. I'd like to remind everyone that parody is a fair use exception to copyright infringement. So, Paul Simon, come at me. Her name is Dr. Al, with 30 years behind in human development. Yes, she's a mastermind. Clients like 7-Eleven and Boston Beer Company.
Okay, that was
Pour
amazing.
her beer to her true humanity. She went to Cal State, and don't you know she was brave enough to spend 4 whole years in Fresno.
Right
She builds better leaders. Yeah, that's her game. Just don't ask Maria to pronounce her name, and you can call her Dr. Al. But hey, let's cut the crap. Why he was in the video? She may be a PhD, but she loves gangster rap. A Renaissance woman.
Oh my God, that was
She'll be your best pal. So
David.
we all salute you because you're the great Dr. Al. Thank
The
you.
back of the head. Like this from it, which is weird, but heck. Al, a very impressive results, my friend. That is some mental toughness and well-being coming through. I can tell that.
All right, but I'm
brain.
also highly competitive. So what's the lowest score?
You know what? It's right around then.
Yeah.
But
Totally
you know what?
right around that.
Records are fuzzy.
We actually even had some discussion on the question, so it probably would have even been a little bit shorter.
A little bit shorter. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were breezing through.
Yeah.
Breezing through.
I do
Yeah. You
thought.
started talking about the
I also do have
breakfast book floor.
opinions very clearly. So ask me opinions.
Well, that's a good
What's
thing.
the one with the ribbons? It's synchronous swimming.
I couldn't remember the
I know.
ribbon. So like, you know
I
what?
still don't remember.
It's
Some
good.
gymnastics, but that was my favorite. So good. Al, this was so much fun. Really amazing content and great conversation as per usual. So thank you for joining us once again. Lots of wonderful things to discuss. So who knows what the future holds for round 3.
Exactly. Ditto, ditto, ditto.
For more information on Dr. Al and bringing self-care leadership training to your organization, visit us at thetrainingassociates.com. We'll see you later.